The following program contains mature subject matter. Viewer discretion is advised.
On this edition of The Fifth Estate, we're following a presidential campaign that could determine the course of the United States and the Middle East for decades to come.
It will be the most important day in the history of Israel. It'll be the most important day in the history of the United States.
The conflict in the Middle East may be unfolding thousands of kilometers away, but the fallout is being felt across the U.S. political landscape.
President Trump deserves the full support of the entire Jewish people.
How big donors looking to shape Israel's future are influencing races from the White House to the Bronx.
We can't let billionaires buy our election.
We'll break down how peace may be taking a backseat to political survival. And we'll show you how anger over the U.S. position on Gaza is dividing the Democratic Party in states it can't afford to lose.
We cannot, in good conscience, endorse Kamala Harris.
And we know Trump is terrible. We are not stupid, but he will stop the genocide.
It's anger that's gone from the streets to the ballot box and could decide who ends up in the White House.
I really believe she doesn't even want my vote.
I'm Steven D'Souza. This is The Fifth Estate.
News 8 is your local election headquarters, and today is primary day in New York. Federal, state, and local races all on our ballot.
So I'm just going to stop here and grab some literature. The race has been emotionally disturbing with such a big money, over $20 million, arrayed against a progressive congressperson. Voting today in the Democratic primary?
Howard Horowitz is canvassing for Democratic Congressman Jamal Bowman.
He's our congressperson for the working person.
Oh, okay.
Normally, getting support for the incumbent would be easy, but Bowman's stance on the war in Gaza has made him a target.
We have all read about mass murders. I cannot believe I'm living through one, and the U.S. government is condoning it and being complicit.
Jamal Bowman voted against condemning Hamas's brutal attack. He supported a resolution calling...
The race has been flooded by attack ads. A powerful pro-Israel lobby group is spending millions.
The Republicans are using this to divide and conquer the Democratic Party, and in that they might succeed.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will...
To understand the many ways the Middle East conflict is impacting the current U.S. election, we must go back 8 years to Donald Trump's first term.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
It offers a glimpse of the key players, their motivations, and the money fueling it all. During his presidency, a significant part of Trump's foreign policy involved controversial moves in Israel.
Donald Trump fashions himself as the most pro-Israeli president in the history of the universe. He virtually ignored Israeli settlement policies on the West Bank. He recognized something that even the Israelis haven't recognized, which is Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights.
Those moves pleased two of his biggest donors, billionaire Sheldon Adelson and his wife Miriam.
You know, quite frankly, Donald Trump was never really involved in Israeli politics before, but given $20 million, that's exactly what he did.
Donald J. Trump opens our embassy in the city.
One of his most controversial decisions, moving the U.S. Embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. Both Israelis and Palestinians claim Jerusalem as their capital. Trump broke with decades of U.S. policy, which sought to avoid the appearance of taking sides. It was criticized as a roadblock to peace, but it was what the Adelsons wanted above all.
That's a classic example of throwing in millions of dollars to elect the president with a string attached. That's exactly what they wanted, and that's what they bought.
The casino magnate and his wife were given a seat of honor at the ceremony.
What a glorious day. Remember this moment.
Trump's policies were also welcomed by Benjamin Netanyahu, who has long sought to strengthen ties with America's right.
You know, there's been a running joke in America for about 30 years that Netanyahu is the 51st senator from Jerusalem. You know, he has been very closely associated with the Republican Party since he rose to power.
President Trump, by recognizing history, you have made history.
There are a lot of commonalities. Look, they're both on their third wife. They're both under investigation. But they also very much don't like losers. It's all about winning.
Both men also have their share of legal trouble. Trump is facing 4 separate indictments.
I never heard of the word indictment. Now I get indicted like every 3 days.
Netanyahu is facing bribery, corruption, and breach of trust charges in 3 separate cases. If convicted, he'd be forced to step down.
The organizing principle of his world since the indictment, over the last 5 years, has been maintaining himself in power.
2 men on similar paths in a world about to change dramatically. The scope and brutality of Hamas's surprise attack shocked and horrified Israelis and the world. Israel estimates Hamas killed more than 1,200 people. 251 men, women, and children were taken from Israel and held hostage in Gaza. Netanyahu went from an embattled prime minister to a wartime leader.
Israel is at war. Though Israel didn't start this war, Israel will finish it.
The Biden administration was firm in its support.
I come to Israel with a single message. You're not alone.
Within a few weeks, Israel launched a massive ground offensive, displacing more than 1 million, laying siege to neighborhoods, schools, and hospitals. In November 2023, there was an exchange of Israeli hostages for Palestinian prisoners and detainees. With pressure from the Israeli public to bring home all the hostages, Netanyahu added a separate end goal, destroying Hamas.
Total victory over Hamas will not take years. It will take months. Victory is within reach.
But total victory has not come, and more than a year later, Israel's siege of Gaza drags on. One reason critics say there's been no ceasefire since, Netanyahu is making a political calculation. To stay in power, he relies on a coalition of right-wing parties that oppose any deal with Hamas.
People say in Israel that there's a 102nd hostage, not just 101, and that's Bibi Netanyahu, that he's being held hostage by his 2 right-wing coalition members. This is the most extreme right-wing government in Israel's history.
So does that desire to stay in power, does that impact how he's been handling the ceasefire negotiations?
I don't think there's any doubt about that. I mean, once the war comes to an end, then the focus will turn to Israeli politics, the issue of responsibility, of accountability.
Another reason to drag things out? Some experts say Netanyahu is holding out for an ally in the White House that will give him free rein to do what he wants domestically, and virtually eliminates the possibility of a 2-state peace plan.
I think Netanyahu sees some really quite appetizing prospects with a second Trump administration. Even in the scenario that Trump tries to bring the war to an end, I think Netanyahu would feel it would be done in ways and with compensatory gifts to Israel that would allow Netanyahu to be strong in his domestic politics.
In the weeks after October 7th, the war reignited long-simmering pro-Israeli and pro-Palestinian tensions on U.S. college campuses.
We had students jump out of their beds to draft what they called an emergency statement to blame Jews and the Zionist entity for the largest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust.
On October 7th, 34 student groups at Harvard University signed a statement blaming Israel for the Hamas attack. We, the undersigned student organizations, hold the Israeli regime entirely responsible for all unfolding violence. Shabbos Kestenbaum was a grad student at Harvard at the time.
Jews did not have time to mourn. We did not have time to grapple with what was happening. We were overnight thrust into a position where we had to defend not only the Jewish state and the right to defend itself, but also our right to exist on campus as proud, outspoken public Jews.
Having long criticized college campuses as overly liberal and elitist, Republicans saw a new opportunity for attack.
At the protests, there were undeniably anti-Semitic images and rhetoric that were being promoted, not at every single one, not by every single protester, but it was definitely there. That being said, Republicans really seized on the moment and turned it into a political cudgel.
The committee will be in order.
A Republican-led congressional committee hauled the presidents of MIT, Penn, and Harvard into hearings.
So the answer is yes, that calling for the genocide of Jews violates Harvard Code of Conduct, correct?
Again, it depends on the context.
It does not depend on the context. The answer is yes, and this is why you should resign. These are unacceptable answers across the board.
Republican pressure would force 3 Ivy League presidents to step down, the start of a broader political campaign.
They really say that this could be the election where the Jewish community flees the Democratic Party en masse. And anti-Semitism plays a major, major role in that. And I definitely think that Republicans sense that this is their opportunity to really sort of crack the window open.
Tell Joe Biden we want a ceasefire now.
As we'll see, as Republicans work to win over Jewish Americans, another bloc of voters was growing more influential and more outspoken.
It was an initiative and an effort to basically say, this is what you need to do to win Michigan. These voters can swing this election come November.
Michigan is home to the largest concentration of Arab Americans in the United States, a voting bloc angry over the Democrats' handling of the war in the Middle East. Voters who could be the difference in a close election. With thousands of civilians killed by the Israeli military, many families and communities like Dearborn have lost relatives in Gaza or know someone who has.
I think for a lot of us, we were just grieving every single day, just seeing the images.
Michigan is a swing state, seen as vital on the road to the White House. In 2020, Arab American voters here overwhelmingly supported Joe Biden.
Right now, the Democratic Party is direct actors in literally killing a number of Arabs across Lebanon and now, or Palestine and now Lebanon. And so
we sat down with leading activists Leila El-Abed and Lexis Zayden. This is one of the few interviews the two have given to foreign media. They say after October 7th, by continuing to supply Israel with weapons, the Democratic administration turned its back on voters here.
They feel betrayed and they feel a lot of grief and they feel a lot of anger, and they're trying to reason how they approach the election come November.
Hey, Michigan, we understand that there's...
In January, the 2 Palestinian Americans helped create a campaign that gave Michigan voters another option in the Democratic primary.
I'm a Democrat.
I'm voting uncommitted.
Rather than choose Joe Biden, voters could pick uncommitted, taking their protest right to the ballot box.
For a lot of voters, non-Arab, non-Muslim voters included, it was an opportunity to say, okay, my vote can mean something. It can send this very clear message.
The message to the Democratic administration: stop supporting Israel's assault on Gaza.
We want to stop the bombs, we want a ceasefire, we want an arms embargo, we also want to see Palestinian liberation and self-determination.
What we're doing is we're asking voters to vote uncommitted.
In 3 weeks, they called and texted hundreds of thousands of people. Their goal: get 10,000 voters to the polls.
It is decision night here in Michigan. Polls are closed. All eyes are on the result.
On primary election night, they couldn't believe what they were seeing.
I think it was like 3 minutes into the election results, and we were like at 17,000.
Yeah.
We have led a movement that is far exceeding expectations, using the ballot box to urge America to stop killing our families. That's all we're asking for. Just stop killing our families. It's actually not that complicated. Just stop killing our families, President Biden. You can do it.
By the end of the night, more than 100,000 people across Michigan had voted uncommitted, more than 13% of all votes cast.
If you are not pro-peace, anti-war, and pro-Palestinian, don't come to Michigan and ask for our vote. It's not happening. Thank you.
Those numbers matter. In 2016, Donald Trump won Michigan by less than 11,000 votes. In 2020, Joe Biden won the state by about 150,000 votes. Now Uncommitted had shown they had the strength to potentially cost Democrats the state and the White House.
I remember being in the bathroom with Lexi and just crying. And Lexi's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I'm just thinking about my family in Palestine. I'm thinking about my grandmother. Sorry. I'm always crying.
And that is a testament to Michigan voters.
We woke up the next morning, and it was just like global headlines, but also it was phone calls of, can you all meet with Georgia? Can you meet with Missouri?
Yeah.
Can you meet with Minnesota?
Wisconsin.
Can you meet with Wisconsin?
Wisconsin.
Vote uninstructed and send a message to the White House.
Their movement was inspiring voters in another important swing state.
President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump are the projected winners of the Democratic and Republican presidential primaries.
But there are warning signs for each candidate tonight. 12 News political.
Here, too, voters sent Democrats a clear warning.
As the night progressed and we went from 20 to 25, 30, over 40, I mean, the energy in the room was extremely emotional.
Like Michigan, Wisconsin is another swing state that helps provide a path to the White House. In 2016, Trump won it by just under 23,000 votes. In 2020, Joe Biden's margin of victory was less than 21,000 votes. Now the protest vote totaled more than 48,000, more than enough to have an impact in November.
If I was, running for president and I saw that in a state like Wisconsin, that an uncommitted campaign just doubled my own margin of victory that I had in my past election, I would be very worried.
In the months after the primary, those voters only got angrier as they watched Israeli attacks on Hamas continue to kill civilians. And Israeli military operations cut off aid, leaving families starving in Gaza. At the same time, Donald Trump was going all in on efforts to court the Jewish American vote.
Any Jewish person that votes for Democrats hates their religion, they hate everything about Israel, and they should be ashamed of themselves because Israel will be destroyed.
Traditionally, Jewish Americans have overwhelmingly supported the Democratic Party. An estimated 70% voted for Joe Biden in 2020. Early in this campaign, voters seem to be drifting away from Biden, but recent polls suggest Kamala Harris is winning them back.
President Trump deserves the full support of the entire Jewish people.
As a group that's eager to vote and could impact swing states, Trump had them in his sights, with the help of donors like Miriam Adelson. She's donated $100 million to support Donald Trump.
Congratulations for clinching the Republican nomination.
Thank you.
What would she want from Trump in return for her support this time? An interview with the Israeli newspaper she owns offered a hint. Trump was asked if he'd support a controversial plan that would allow Israel to annex the West Bank.
Would you support such a plan?
Well, they want to show it to me. They want to discuss it. I'm going to take a look at it.
If he is elected and Miriam Adelson kind of wants a return on her investment, there is a running assumption that she will make demands that are in line with the sort of policy that Trump was on the path toward during his first term. You know, Israel came very close to annexing the West Bank.
When Trump talks about, you know, he promised his donors, his mega donors, that he's going to annex the West Bank to be part of Israel, I think that is a real threat.
Memories are still fresh here of the Muslim travel ban and the vitriol directed at their communities during Trump's first term.
We were, you know, in front of the airport protesting the Muslim ban. Then we were helping families that were under the threat of deportation.
Despite that, a recent poll of Arab Americans found support split between Trump and Kamala Harris, with 81% of Arab Americans saying Gaza is a key issue. With health officials in Gaza reporting more than 43,000 people killed, some see Trump as a potential peacemaker, the lesser of two evils.
They're trying to balance making a morally conscious decision of, if I vote Harris, am I complicit in this genocide? If I vote Trump, what does that mean for this democracy?
After the excitement around uncommitted success in the spring, reality was sinking in. A ceasefire wasn't going to happen, and there will be no easy choice come Election Day.
We will never stand for the bombing and killing of babies in Gaza.
Coming up, how the pro-Israel lobby spent millions to take down critics of the war in Gaza. This has been a presidential campaign like no other. 2 assassination attempts on a former president.
Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if...
Then, after questions about his age, the incumbent president bowed out.
Good evening.
His vice president Kamala Harris took over the nomination, bringing new energy to the race.
Kamala Harris.
Yet for all the twists and turns in the election, the war in Gaza has continued to reverberate through the campaign. In suburban New York, incumbent Congressman Jamal Bowman was facing unprecedented opposition. He's a member of the so-called Squad, progressive Democrats who've spoken out against Israeli government policy and its handling of the war with Hamas.
He supported a resolution calling the founding of Israel a catastrophe. And
Since then, the airwaves here have been flooded with attack ads. Funding the campaign, the United Democracy Project, an arm of the American-Israel Public Affairs Committee, better known as AIPAC.
AIPAC really wants to see both the Democratic and Republican parties becoming pro-Netanyahu parties. And so that's what they're investing in this election.
For decades, AIPAC has been nonpartisan. AIPAC lobbies and donates to pro-Israel candidates from both parties. Its main focus, securing billions in U.S. aid annually for Israel. Now, AIPAC was spending more than $15 million to unseat Bowman, making this the most expensive primary race in U.S. history. How much is usually spent on a primary?
Oh, not that kind of money. Usually from outside groups, several $100,000 will be spent in a primary race.
We are the people. We can't let billionaires buy our election. We can't let billionaires buy our democracy. We got to stand up and represent our communities and remind the world that we decide the direction of our district and we decide the direction of our democracy.
We watched as a sitting congressman, in what should be a safe seat, tried to squeeze every vote he could with hours to go before polls closed. Did you ever think that conflict thousands of kilometers away would play out here in the Bronx?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, listen, you know, Israel is a very important issue for many people, and I understand that. And Palestine is as well. And what we need to do is talk about the safety and security of the people of Israel and the safety and security of people of Palestine at the same time. We got to stop having one conversation and not the other. This is about everyone's humanity.
Later that night, the realization was apparent on the faces of Bowman supporters. Bowman was defeated, though he remained defiant.
We will never stand for the bombing and killing of babies in Gaza.
Let me be clear. The collective punishment of Palestinians in Gaza is a war crime.
Weeks later, another vocal critic of Israel's war was taken down in a Democratic primary.
Ceasefire now!
AIPAC again spent millions to defeat fellow squad member, Democratic Congresswoman Cori Bush from Missouri.
What AIPAC wants to do is it wants to make its money count. So Rashida Tlaib, for example, is very popular in her district. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is very popular in her district. There's a reason AIPAC did not spend against them. Meanwhile, they're spending against Jamal Bowman and they're spending against Cori Bush because these were two vulnerable candidates.
And it served as a very, very sharp example to the rest of the Democratic Party that if you want to get elected to Congress, don't follow in their footsteps.
But progressive Democrats weren't the only ones critical of Israel's war with Hamas. There were warnings of a humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
There's famine, full-blown famine in the north, and it's moving its way south.
An international criminal court prosecutor called for the arrest of Hamas leaders.
Torture during captivity is a crime against humanity.
And the arrest of Benjamin Netanyahu, both for alleged war crimes.
The crimes include starvation of civilians as a method of warfare.
And the International Court of Justice heard allegations of genocide in Gaza. A ceasefire continued to seem unattainable. At the end of May, there was a glimmer of hope.
Israel has offered a comprehensive new proposal. It's a roadmap to an enduring ceasefire and the release of all hostages.
It seemed like a critical moment, but Netanyahu was silent until more than 2 weeks later, when he released a video criticizing the Biden administration for delaying weapons shipments.
I said it's inconceivable that in the past few months, the administration has been withholding weapons and ammunition to Israel.
Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene.
We came to the Republican convention to see for ourselves the push for the Jewish American vote.
Unfortunately, there are some people who are foolish enough to still believe Democratic lies. I hope they'll wake up and see the truth and vote Republican.
Republicans were clear in their support for Netanyahu's ongoing campaign in Gaza.
Let me hear you cheer if you support Israel. Let me hear you cheer if you support Israel.
For the first time, the head of the Republican Jewish coalition spoke on the main stage.
This is our chance to continue the incredible pro-Israel legacy of the most pro-Israel president in history, Donald J. Trump.
The family of a hostage appealed to America in prime time.
Imagine over 9 months not knowing whether your son is alive, waking up every morning, praying that he too is still waking up every morning.
Bring him home! Bring him home! Bring him home!
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome recent Harvard University graduate, Shabbos Kestenbaum.
Also on the main stage, a familiar face from the campus protests.
The Democratic Party, the party I registered to vote for the day I turned 18, has become ideologically poisoned.
A former Democrat, Kestenbaum has become a regular on the Republican-speaking circuit.
Wow, thank you so much.
Away from the main stage, Republican power brokers reaffirmed their support for Netanyahu's Israel directly to delegates and donors. We caught up with one of Israel's biggest supporters in Congress, Senator Lindsey Graham.
Do you think there is a quid pro quo with perhaps Trump officials saying to Bibi,
we'll just wait till we're in power, and then, you may have free reign to do what you want.
President Trump is a very reasonable man on such things. He understands the Palestinians are not going to go away. The main thing he said to me was during one of his the debate, I want to end these wars soon, even before I get in office.
Speaker, the Prime Minister of the State of Israel.
Shortly after the convention, Netanyahu was welcomed enthusiastically by Republicans in D.C. and by Donald Trump in Florida. At the White House, however, the message was clear.
It is time for this war to end.
But Netanyahu dramatically expanded Israeli military actions, assassinating Hamas and Hezbollah leaders, and bombing Hezbollah targets in Lebanon in retaliation for rocket attacks into Israel. Lebanese officials estimate that since October 7, 2023, Israel's attacks have killed more than 2,500 people, including many civilians. A ceasefire and the return of the hostages seemed impossible.
I think that nothing dramatic will happen, unfortunately for the hostages, before the election. I just think it's too risky. I mean, if they could reach a ceasefire deal, the Biden administration would be over the moon.
Now is the time to get a hostage deal and a ceasefire deal done.
Coming up, could the Biden administration's unwavering support for Israel cost Kamala Harris the election?
If somebody were running for any other election and they lost, we wouldn't say, oh, yeah, your voters didn't do what they needed to do. We would say, you didn't do what you needed to do to earn the votes.
After Joe Biden stepped aside at the end of July, Kamala Harris wasted no time solidifying her support and hyping up the Democratic base.
Kamala Harris has become a cultural phenomenon.
The pundits talked up the vibe change in the campaign. But in Michigan, the uncommitted movement was only cautiously optimistic.
There was a little bit of a breath of fresh air of, oh, there's this opportunity we have, or this small gateway to try to change the narrative or to change the perspective.
We cannot allow ourselves to become numb to the suffering, and I will not be silent.
But was Harris listening to pro-Palestinian voices in Michigan?
I'm here because we believe in democracy.
At a rally in Detroit in August, pro-Palestinian protesters attempted to interrupt her speech.
You know what? If you want Donald Trump to win, then say that, otherwise I'm speaking.
At that event, Layla Elabed spoke with Harris briefly.
And I told her directly, that Michigan voters want to be able to vote for her. Unfortunately, especially now more than ever, I cannot bring myself to do that because she hasn't done enough to tell me that she's going to protect people that I love and care about.
She says Harris told her she was open to meeting with uncommitted leaders, but the next day, a spokesperson tweeted this, saying Harris will always ensure Israel is able to defend itself and does not support an arms embargo.
We were like, yeah, we know. This is why we asked if we could meet with Vice President Harris to discuss what an arms embargo could look like, what it could look like to adopt a policy that saves lives, and also an opportunity to unite the Democratic parties.
If you ask American officials the difference between Biden and Harris in the Middle East, they will say, quote, Zippo, zero, zilch. There's no daylight between the Harris and the Biden administration.
Uncommitted leaders turned their attention to the Democratic National Convention.
I have held the hand of children who are taking their last gasps.
Their main request, a Palestinian speaker for the main stage in prime time. One of the names they put forward was Tanya Haj Hassan, an intensive care doctor who had volunteered in Gaza.
His exact words were something effective. Everybody I love is now in heaven. I don't want to be here anymore. That is one of so many stories. I'm giving you, I'm so sorry, Layla, but I think people need to hear this.
Instead, they were given this one-hour panel on Palestinian human rights away from the main stage spotlight.
Will not suppress the voices of Palestinian Americans.
Uncommitted delegates staged a sit-in, desperate to have their voices heard.
The Vice President's decision to suppress us is unacceptable. And so I've run out of options from my position as a delegate. And so I'm leaning into my power as a regular, everyday person, and I'm sitting here, and I'm not going anywhere, Roger.
That night, inside the convention, the DNC welcomed the parents of Hirsch Goldberg Poland, who was being held hostage by Hamas.
There is a surplus of agony on all sides of the tragic conflict in the Middle East. In a competition of pain, there are no winners.
How did you feel in the weeks after the DNC, after that whole experience?
I mean, there's a lot of anger, frustration, the feeling of feeling dehumanized, feeling defeated.
Because the whole time you were there at the DNC, it was this joyous party of the big tent, that there's room for everyone in this big, joyous, democratic tent, except a Palestinian. That is the message I received.
Vice President Harris has chosen a side, the right side. Harris has made herself clear. She stands with Israel and the Jewish people. She has.
Republicans, meanwhile, were running ads like this in Michigan, depicting Harris as steadfastly pro-Israel.
We can trust she'll always support Israel.
Donald Trump was attending meetings on fighting anti-Semitism.
Hello to everyone at the Republican Jewish Coalition.
And speaking at numerous Jewish American events, often with Miriam Adelson nearby.
Mr. President. I'm now polling at about 40%. That means 60% of Jewish people are going to vote for Kamala or a Democrat. And honestly, you ought to have your heads examined.
As Election Day draws near, he paints a dark picture of what could happen if they don't vote for him.
Bad things, very bad things are going to happen. And I'll put it to you very simply and as gently as I can. I wasn't treated properly by the voters who happen to be Jewish. I don't know, do they know what the hell is happening? If I don't win this election, and the Jewish people would really have a lot to do with that if that happens, Israel, in my opinion, will cease to exist within 2 years.
You know, most American Jews don't appreciate being treated as if the relationship is completely transactional. Not only that, but it really kind of flirts with these tropes of dual loyalty where it conflates the American Jewish community with Israel.
We all agree that we have a certain responsibility in this presidential election.
After the disappointment of the DNC, uncommitted organizers returned to Michigan to find voters angry and unsure what to do next.
And we know Trump is terrible. We are not stupid, but he will stop the genocide. He might do worse things, but he will stop the genocide.
After flexing their political muscle in the primaries, the time had come. Would uncommitted commit to one candidate?
Our movement, number one, cannot endorse Vice President Harris.
I mean, even when I think about, you know, the choice of voting for Kamala Harris, I really believe she doesn't even want my vote. It's very incredibly difficult. It's incredibly emotional for me to make that decision. But I am voting my conscience right now, and neither of those candidates are candidates that I align with.
Can I add something here?
Of course.
And I actually hope you all put this in the documentary because it's actually like a very important part of our narrative, that whatever happens in November falls squarely on the shoulders of this Democratic administration. It does not fall on the shoulders of Arab Americans. It does not fall on the shoulders of Muslim Americans. It does not fall on the shoulders of Palestinian Americans. And it doesn't fall on the shoulders of uncommitted.
Who are you going to vote for?
I'm also skipping the top of the ticket. And it wasn't a hard decision for me.
You know, I think you have to take them at their word at this point. I don't know if it'll just be a few thousand, if it'll be several thousand, if it'll be 20,000, but you know, they make a difference in the states where it matters. So you have to take them seriously if you are the Harris campaign.
You tell us this election is about democracy, but surely democracy has to also be about respecting international law and to stop enabling and providing weapons to the violation of that law. So it's a strong argument.
More than a year after the October 7th attacks, Israel killed Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. Afterward, Trump says Netanyahu called him.
He called me up yesterday morning. We talked. I congratulated him on obviously doing a very good job. He calls me on occasion. I think he wants my views on things.
And while some called Sinwar the last roadblock to a ceasefire, Israel's military campaigns roll on with no end in sight.
If your movement is successful in sending a message like you did in the primaries, that could swing the state and possibly the election for Donald Trump. Doesn't that concern you?
I think that it isn't our job to earn votes for Kamala Harris. I think it is Kamala Harris's job to earn votes. What we have done is show that they don't have the support that they need, but they could have that support if they shift on a policy.
When the story of the 2024 election is written, the Hamas-Israel war will be front and center. It's shifted loyalties and seen the rise of a potentially powerful new voting bloc.
Whatever the outcome on this election, it's hard to imagine a Democrat politics going forward that can continue to be so negligent on this issue without paying a price with its voters.